Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and here's today's comic, Electric Warriors number 4, the book you never cared about, Death at the Hands of a Dominator, by Orlando Foreman and Hi-Fi. What a name, Hi-Fi. Oh boy. I've been enjoying this book, actually. It sound like I'm not. It is a fun story. I like Orlando's creativity. Seems to be one of the more creative storytellers in the big two. And so, like, what he makes up for in maybe storytelling skill. What he lacks in storytelling skill, he makes up for in creativity and interesting ideas. And in this book, if you haven't been following along, it takes place in 3000 and something future of the DC universe, and it's one of those cliched tropes where people have given up war. There's no more war, but what they do instead is they have these champions that fight instead of armies, and if the champion wins, it's like your army won, and you get whatever you were fighting for. This has been done before. I think like Twilight Zone did a story on this. I think there was a famous Star Trek episode, original series, that did one of these things. And always, in my experience, they kind of expose like how this is a stupid idea, which is really weird because you'd think like in science fiction they would try to show how it's a good idea. Like, oh, look, instead of millions of people dying, only one person dies. But it looks good on the surface. This follows the same path. War is bad. One person dying is not bad. However, the fact that millions die in war makes it so people really don't. It's like a deterrent, right? It's kind of like the whole Cold War, if you think about it. Like, if you're old enough to remember the Cold War, like some people, this guy, you kind of always knew there was never going to be a real war because Russia and America would wipe each other out, right? So it was like each has enough firepower to just annihilate the other. So that is a deterrent to ever actually fight. So while war is heinous and bad and millions of people die, it doesn't happen that much because of the stakes. What this book and these type of stories expose are that when the stakes are nothing, then war is all the time. And people wage it much more. It's redundant what I just said, but like the people who wage it have no thought to care because they're not risking their lives at all. In real war, even the people who wage it, may not fight on the front lines. They still have something to risk. You know, Hitler died in World War II, even though he never fought on the front lines, but he committed suicide rather than be captured. These guys don't have anything to risk. And so that's what this whole book's kind of about. And I don't care about that. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's unoriginal, it's stupid. Like, I'm cool with unoriginality. It's all about execution to me. Like, if you come up with something that's been done before, but you come up with a really cool way to execute it or throw a little twist, let's do it. I'm on. And I've been enjoying this book. It's been fun. But this book was harder. I mean, look at this art. This is a DC book. Come on. So these characters are finding out, they're spying on what are they called? The Gilded. Basically the rich aristocracy that have all the power, and send these guys to battle for them. Not a lot really happens in this book on its own. It's really sort of connective tissue to the greater story. We see some more battles. And you don't necessarily need to know too much about those. Now, a couple things stood out to me in this book. One is I've become a really big fan of My Hero Academia. And if you haven't read or watched the anime, you need to do so. So good. I did a video on My Hero Academia explaining why, if you want to know more in detail on that. But suffice it to say, it does an outstanding job of telling a story of heroes. But it also does a really cool job of matching heroes against each other in a way that's really compelling. Like, throughout the series, the characters will battle, because the whole thing is they're learning to be heroes, right? They're My Hero Academia is about these characters are in school, superhero school, essentially. So they have contests against each other to, like, train and see who's best and everything. And the author of that book and the Japanese in general seem to have a really good sense of how to tell these type of stories to make it really interesting when character A versus character B and who's going to prevail and how they can this power is going to overcome this power, and but this person understands how to do this and he's more committed to the and all this. They get into the whole drama of the fight and the drama of the conflict, and that's really compelling. And they can extend a whole issue or two over one fight because they make it that dramatic. Drama doesn't just have to be people talking. Drama is things happening. And a fight can be dramatic. And when a fight is dramatic, it's much more interesting. I just started watching another anime called Black Clover, which is very similar in My Hero Academia in a lot of ways because it kind of captures some of the core tenets, but instead of superheroes, they're wizards. I'm not going to go into detail, but it utilizes some of the same things where it's like there's just these different ranks of characters, like at different power levels, and sometimes they fight against each other to see who's better, and then they, rank up, and it's interesting. You're like, oh, if this guy fought this guy, who would win? And then they make it so compelling. This book is doing a similar thing here with these electric warriors. They all have to fight in, an arena, gladiator style, to defend their planet. The problem is Steve Orlando doesn't know how to make that compelling. That's where this book would shine. If this book was doing the same thing the Japanese are doing with books like My Hero Academia, Black Clover, even One Punch Man. I'm sure there's more books I'm not aware of. Fairy Tail sort of does that. There's other animes. Like, this would be awesome. This could be an ongoing series, and who's the greatest electric warrior of them all, and people trying to get up the ranks, and then you could have the Earth character being the upstart, newbie, and he's got Kal-El Shroud, and he starts off as a nobody, and eventually works his way up, and he gets help from others, and then he discovers this great conspiracy going on. And I'm just like, wow, this could have so much potential if it did what someone else did. It doesn't have to be original. See, like, Black Clover's not original. It feels a lot like My Hero Academia, but it twists things here and there to make it different enough to where you're like, oh, this is a new spin on a classic trope that I really like. That's what this needs to be. This needs to be a new spin on a classic trope, and this hasn't been done. DC Universe, super characters, far in the future. Oh, this could be something, and it just feels meh. And just look at this travesty of art. It's not pretty. Look at that. So he draws this arena thing, and this is like, get out the rulers, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. I draw a little stick figure there, stick figure. Oh, I'm done. It's like, come on. The other thing, what was the other thing that I was going to talk about? Oh, so you probably heard the news by now. DC is canceling a bunch of their title, like they're dropping down their number of titles they're printing. I somewhat think that's a good thing. Some people are crying, oh, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. No. Back in the 80s and 90s when comics were at their best, Marvel and DC probably had like 30 titles. Right? That was a lot. Nowadays, Marvel's got like 100 a month, and DC was up to like 70 at one point. It's just too many books. This is an example of a book that should have never been made. Not because it's trash, but because it's spreading, what's that old saying where you spread the butter too thin over the bread? Like it's too much bread, not enough butter. I forget that saying. This is a okay book. It's fine, right? I'm enjoying it. I'm going to continue buying it. I'm not going to enjoy giving my money to it because it's $3.99, and when it's all said and done, I'm going to be paying $24 for this. This hurts my wallet. It's not $24 good. It's $5 to $10 trade paperback good, right? I could see easily when this comes on Comixology and there's a sale for trade paperback for $5.99, pick it up. It's a fun story. Not for this price, unless you're just really dedicated to it. I'm already over halfway through, so I'm just going to see it through as a collector. But this is an example of DC cutting back books. You drop this book and the other just not so good, then your line becomes more solid. It becomes just nothing but great books. That's kind of the problem that DC's having right now is everyone is kind of just seeing all the bad at DC. It reminds me a lot of when a band, like a music band, will come out with a double album. I always hate double albums because inevitably, like, you listen to the album and you're like, wow, if I cut out half of this and just took the best 50% off this album and made it a single album, this would be a killer album. But it's just filled with fluff. DC's lineup is like that. It's got a lot of great stuff. But then it's also got Kelly Sue DeConnick on Aquaman, Bendis is Superman. This Electric Warrior of Orlando's, I like what you're doing here, but this art is trash. And this book is just not enough to warrant. The industry is not successful enough to be making this book. I don't think. It's just, you got to focus on your core. Build that up. Be strong and successful. And then you can start throwing out books like this. I'm not trying to hate on this book at all. It's a mile. It's like a 3-star book. Yeah. So I just want to see less of this and more awesome. I want to see more Tomasi Detective Comics. I want to see more Hawkman by Robert Venditti. I want to see that level of greatness. Skim the fat. All right, thanks for watching. Leave comments below, like and subscribe if you do, and I'll see you next time.